Professor Painter, on May 5th of this year, you put out a tweet. You said, I'm going to quote, "There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's the Supreme Court." Would you tell me which members of the Supreme Court you believe are bought? You're here as an expert from my Democratic friends, and you say all this stuff. You called on September 16, 2023, a professor at the University of Chicago, very distinguished professor, Brian Leiter. You called him a racist. Can you explain to me why you think he's a racist?
When we have Supreme Court justices on yachts and in planes of billionaires and not being disclosed.
Anybody besides Justice Thomas you think is bought on the Supreme Court?
I believe that the court needs to clean
Anybody
up
besides
its
Justice
act.
Thomas?
I'm not going to go through each
I mean,
justice.
you tweeted it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Liberty Watchtower, where truth takes center stage. Here, we keep you informed, engaged, and thinking critically in a world that often demands it. If you're new to the channel, like this video, subscribe, and tap the notification bell to never miss a dose of real, unfiltered truth. Now, let's dive in. In recent years, the American people have witnessed a troubling erosion of confidence in the Supreme Court of the United States. This is not due to disagreements over legal philosophy alone, but because of growing concerns over transparency, accountability, and the appearance, and in some cases, the reality of undue influence. We have learned of justices accepting lavish trips, gifts, and private travel from billionaires and political donors, often without proper disclosure. We've seen a troubling lack of clear ethical guidelines rules that would bind any other judge in America, but not, apparently, the 9 most powerful jurists in the country. This double standard is not sustainable in a democracy that demands equal justice under law.
Kennedy is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks.
Senator Kane.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses here today. Professor Painter, on May 5th of this year, you put out a tweet. You said, I'm going to quote, "There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's the Supreme Court." Would you tell me which members of the Supreme Court you believe are bought?
I was particularly concerned at that point when I posted that tweet.
I understand, but if you could, I've got really limited time, and I apologize for interrupting. Just tell me which members of the court you are bought.
I did not think that Justice Clarence Thomas should be failing to disclose his trips on a billionaire's
Do you think
yacht
he's
and
bought?
airplane.
Do you think he's bought?
I believe that there is grave risk.
Do you think he's bought?
I said there is grave risk
Do you think he's bought?
to the confidence of the American people in our Supreme
Well, if you
Court.
don't think he's bought, why did you say it?
I said
Yes,
that
you said members of the Supreme Court are bought. You're here testifying as an expert for my Democratic friends, and you're saying the members of the Supreme Court are bought?
I said when the American people feel that way when we have Supreme Court justices
feel that way?
on yachts and in planes of billionaires and not being disclosed.
Anybody besides Justice Thomas you think is bought on the Supreme Court?
I believe that the court needs to clean
Anybody
up
besides
its act.
Justice Thomas?
I'm not going to go through each
I mean,
justice.
you tweeted it.
I tweeted the way the American people feel.
Did you mean
the
it
way
when
I
you
feel.
tweeted it?
And I stand by that tweet. This Supreme Court of the United States
right.
needs to clean up its
Let me
act.
ask you a couple others here, because you've on September 17, 2020, you tweeted, "It looks like Putin's favorite senator could lose," referring to Senator Lindsey Graham. Could you tell me your evidence for saying that Senator Graham is President Putin's favorite senator?
I don't recall that tweet and the story.
Well, I've got it. It's
tweeted
right
out.
here. It's right here.
I'm happy to look at the tweet, and I'm happy to write you, explain that. I don't know what that has to do with climate change.
Well, it has to do with your credibility. Did you say, what is your basis for saying that Senator Graham is President Putin's? Have you ever talked to President Putin?
I have not talked to President Putin, and I would be happy to go look at the tweet and look at the story that I tweeted out and what Senator Graham had said in that context. You know, this is something
you say all this stuff. For example, you're here as an expert from my Democratic friends, and you say all this stuff. You called on September 16th, 2023, a professor at the University of Chicago, very distinguished professor, Brian Leiter. You called him a racist. Can you explain to me why you think he's a racist?
I remember a series of tweets with him. He's a Marxist who put out a number of statements attacking African Americans and women. And he also was raising money for someone who had called the police on a black student for sleeping in the common room, and now has a wokekkk.com website attacking me.
That's fair enough.
So
fair enough.
I will just say one thing that I learned in high school debate, that when you have no argument, you simply change the subject.
All right.
Today's hearing is not just about legal ethics in the abstract. It's about how unchecked influence, whether from special interests, political donors, or ideological networks, can shape judicial decisions in ways that affect millions of Americans. That includes decisions on environmental protection, corporate regulation, and the very policies we rely on to combat climate change. And when public confidence falters, when people believe the courts are compromised or bought, our entire legal system is at risk. The legitimacy of the judiciary depends not only on legal reasoning, but on the appearance of impartiality and integrity. This is not a partisan issue. It is an American issue. Integrity in our courts must be a shared value, no matter where we sit politically. The judiciary must not only be above reproach, it must be seen as such by the people it serves. I look forward to today's discussion and to working together toward reforms that will strengthen our courts, restore public confidence, and ensure that justice in America is not for sale.
On October 15th of 2020, you said Lindsey Graham is soliciting cash payments in return for voting on a Supreme Court nomination. What evidence, that's a pretty bold statement, Professor. What evidence do you have for alleging that Senator Graham was taking cash in return for one of his votes?
I don't recall that specific tweet,
Here it is, right here. Here it is.
I do recall. And
do you think he was taking cash for one of his votes?
I have received campaign...
Do you think he was taking cash for one of his votes?
I'm answering your question, Senator. I have received solicitations from both political parties.
Do you think Lindsey Graham was taking cash for one of his votes? It's a simple question, Professor.
I have received cash, solicitations for cash on my email. And yes, from both political parties in connection with Supreme Court confirmation votes.
Well, I'm out of time, but let me just say for the record.
It's wrong.
My aunt's Facebook page has more credibility than you do. I could spend the rest of the day reading your quotes where you make allegations against people and you can't defend them.
You've said nothing about climate change. You quoted everybody from a Marxist
Senator
to all sorts of other people. This has absolutely nothing to do with the topic of the hearing, Senator.
Senator